Welcome back to Midnight Narratives. Tonight, we're diving deep into one of the most unsettling debates happening right now. It's about a man who's become the most wanted figure in Australia in years, Dezzi Freeman, and how his story is beginning to look eerily similar to a case that shook the United States more than a decade ago. By the end of this, you might find yourself asking whether these two stories are connected by coincidence or whether we're watching a pattern of violence that stretches across borders and generations. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Because I have a feeling this one is going to split opinion. So, who is Dezzi Freeman? On paper, he's a man in his 50s living with his wife and children in a quiet town in Victoria. But dig deeper and you see a long trail of anti-government views, sovereign citizen ideology and open hostility toward authority. For years he'd been posting online, railing against politicians, declaring courts illegitimate and pushing conspiracy theories about treason and unlawful government. It wasn't just talk either. He showed up in courtrooms, he tried to lay charges on officials, he demanded to be recognised as outside the system. And then came the breaking point. When police arrived at his rural property in Porponka, shots rang out. 3 officers were hit, 2 killed outright, and 1 badly wounded. Freeman disappeared into the bush, and that's where the story takes a darker turn. Police describe him as heavily armed, trained in survival, and motivated not to surrender. Entire towns have been locked down, helicopters circle overhead and checkpoints dot the roads, all in search of one man who seems to have vanished into the wilderness. If you're sitting there thinking this sounds extreme, you're right. But history has a way of repeating itself. Back in May of 2010, across the ocean in West Memphis, Arkansas, police officers pulled over a van during what should have been a routine traffic stop. Inside was Jerry Kane, a 50-something sovereign citizen lecturer, and his teenage son, Joseph. Jerry had been travelling the country teaching people how to resist foreclosure and reject authority, convinced that the US government had no legitimacy. His son, raised in the same ideology, sat beside him, not just believing, but ready to act. When the officers approached, Joseph, just 16 years old, leapt out of the van with an AK-47. In seconds, 2 police officers lay dead. The Kanes sped away, sparking a manhunt that gripped the state. Hours later, police found them in a Walmart parking lot. Another firefight broke out, more officers were wounded, and both Jerry and Joseph were killed in the hail of gunfire. A father and son, united in ideology, destroyed by it. Now here's where the comparison becomes unavoidable. Both Freeman and the Kanes were deeply embedded in the sovereign citizen mindset. Both viewed the police not as protectors of order, but as enemies of freedom. Both escalated from rhetoric to bloodshed in confrontations that shocked their countries. And both stories were family affairs. Jerry Kane dragged his teenage son into his fight. Freeman lived his ideology with his wife and children on that rural block, shaping a household around distrust of government. These weren't isolated loners. They were men whose families were part of the bubble. But there's a crucial difference. The Kane story ended quickly and violently. Freeman's is still unfolding. The Kanes never had a chance to explain themselves. Their ending left nothing but bodies and questions. Freeman, on the other hand, remains at large. Some see him as a domestic terrorist who murdered police officers and now hides in the hills. Others, especially online, see him as a man pushed too far by a government they already don't trust. And that's where the debate heats up. Was Freeman always destined to follow this path like the Kanes? Or is he something new, a uniquely Australian version of the sovereign story? We know he was active online for years. We know he pushed sovereign citizen talking points long before this shooting. So the argument that this came out of nowhere doesn't hold. But is he acting alone? Or does he represent the tip of something larger? The Kanes were dismissed as extremists. Yet the sovereign citizen movement in the US has grown since then, spawning more confrontations, more standoffs, more violence. Could the same thing be happening here? And Freeman is just the first name to break into the headlines. Then there's the family angle. The Kanes made it clear ideology can pass from parent to child, with deadly results. Freeman's children are younger, but they've grown up in a household where their father openly rejected authority. What happens to kids raised in that world? Do they adopt the same views? Do they resist them? And how far does a family's loyalty go when the state comes knocking? People online are already split. Some argue Freeman is just another Jerry Kane, a dangerous man who dragged his family into his own paranoia and will eventually end up dead or arrested. Others insist the comparison isn't fair, that Freeman's story is more complicated, that maybe he was provoked, maybe the truth of what happened that day hasn't all come out. Police say one thing, his supporters whisper another. Just like in the US, truth and conspiracy are colliding, and the result is chaos. So here's the debate I'll leave with you. Do you see Freeman as Australia's Kane? Another sovereign citizen who turned words into violence and left a trail of death behind him? Or do you think the comparison misses something? That Freeman's story, for better or worse, is unique to the environment he came from, the country he lives in, and the pressures he faced. Thanks for watching Midnight Narratives. If you stayed with me through this long dive, you know this story is far from finished. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you think. Is Freeman a mirror of Jerry and Joseph Kane, proof that sovereign violence repeats itself? Or is this a different chapter altogether? Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.